If everyone will please take their seats, let me begin by asking everyone on the platform and in the audience to please mute your cell phones. Let's have kind of a social compact about this. I know that you think that no one's going to call you right now to offer you a new credit card or anything else, and it won't be a disturbance. But if your cell phone goes off, we'll ask you to stand and sing a karaoke song. I recommend Build Me Up, Buttercup. There are no high notes. Good morning. I'm Dave Christie, Provost and Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2017 Convocation of Baruch College. Today we welcome 1,500 new first-year students to Baruch. Your presence here is a testament to the hard work of our admissions staff, led by Vice President Mary Gorman, who I'd like to stand and be recognized. In coming to Baruch, you are joining a campus that includes talented and aspiring students seeking bachelor's degrees in business administration, fine arts, humanities, social and biological sciences, mathematics, and public affairs. Baruch also offers master's degrees in many business specializations, financial engineering, psychology, communication studies, higher education, public affairs, and for the first time this year, international affairs. These enable students to take leadership positions within our community and economy. Baruch faculty are also responsible for awarding doctorates in business administration and industrial organizational psychology in collaboration with the CUNY Graduate Center. I hope that several of you in this room today will someday choose to earn an advanced degree and join our faculty in the life of university research and teaching. I would now like to introduce President of Baruch College, Dr. Mitchell B. Wallerstein. President Wallerstein is beginning his 8th year as president of Baruch College. He's a native New Yorker who studied at Dartmouth College, Syracuse University, and MIT. Mitchell Wallerstein was appointed by President Clinton in 1993 as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Counter-Proliferation Policy and Senior Defense Representative for Trade Security Policy. Other positions that he has held include Vice President of the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation in Chicago, and Dean of the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs at Syracuse University. He's an outstanding academic leader. Please welcome our college president, Dr. Mitchell Wellerstein.
Well, good morning. How's everybody doing? Yeah? College is okay so far? Good. Well, as president of the college, it's my pleasure to welcome you, the class of 2021, to the Baruch College community. With about 1,600 students in this first-year class, as Provost Christie indicated, plus another 1,700 students coming to us by way of transfer, the class of 2021 is likely to be the largest in the history of Baruch College. The numbers are still being finalized, but we have received over 30,000 applications this year for admission. So you should feel proud that you are sitting here and that you were offered admission to a highly selective college. And I am proud of the class of 2021 because it well meets our high standards for academic quality and ethnic and racial diversity. The average GPA for your class is 3.3, and while we are still calculating the average SAT score, we know that it is already the highest in the history of the college. About 15% of you will be participating in honors programs, including the Baruch College Scholars, the Dean's Scholars Program, and the Macaulay Honors College. While more than 90% of you come from the state of New York, your class also includes students from 14 other states. Many, of course, come from the tri-state area, but we have students who come to us from as far away as California, Texas, and Hawaii. And look around. This class also includes incredible diversity, and that is what makes Baruch the unique place that it is. Nearly 20% of you are citizens of another country. And among the many first-generation Americans in this class, your families come from more than 160 different countries around the world. And you speak more than 120 languages in your homes, in addition to English. So the class of 2021 also continues Baruch's long-standing legacy as an institution that educates many first-generation college students. More than 40% of you are the first in your family ever to go to college. In short, the class of 2021 is a rare instance where we have both quality and quantity. Now, that is an overview of who you are. But before we move forward with your college career and all the things that you'll learn here in the next few days about how to be a college student, I'd like you to step back with me for just a minute to the 19th century so you can learn about the college's namesake, Bernard M. Baruch. To do so, I will start by giving you your first pop quiz as a college student. Are you ready? Was Bernard Baruch A highly successful financier and Wall Street investor, B, an advisor to 7 presidents of the United States, C, a racehorse owner, D, an amateur boxer, E, a diplomat who sought the abolition of atomic weapons, or E, all of the above? That's why you got admitted here, you're smart. Yes, the answer is all of the above. Bernard Baruch was indeed a remarkable and multi-talented individual. He was a millionaire before the age of 30. He started his career as what was then called a runner on Wall Street. He was an advisor to 7 presidents, from Woodrow Wilson to John F. Kennedy. He was a diplomat who represented the United States in international negotiations. And he was an individual who in his later years became known as the park bench philosopher, because he had this penchant of sitting on park benches in Lafayette Park opposite the White House and in Central Park here in New York to discuss the issues of the day with passersby. And in fact, when you enter the 24th Street entrance to the vertical campus later today, you will see Bernard Baruch sitting on his park bench. There's a sculpture of him there, and I urge you to sit down next to him, take a selfie, and post it to various social media so that others can see it as well. And if you'd like to know more about Baruch, or Bernie, as the undergraduate student government calls him, you can learn that by going in to see the exhibit, which is just inside the doors to the library building. As you enter to the left, you'll see an exhibit about Bernard Baruch and his extraordinary life. Bernard Baruch was also a philanthropist and a loyal alumnus of this college, and he left the school its first endowment, which later became part of a significant amount of private resources that have grown over the years and that make it possible for us to offer opportunities for you all that are not available, frankly, to students from other CUNY colleges. So it's really an extraordinary bequest that he left us. I also want to tell you a little bit about the building in which you're sitting, which we call the Lawrence and Eris Field Building at 17 Lexington Avenue, because this is also part of a Baruch and CUNY important history for Baruch and CUNY. Let me share with you some of the historical background, and you'll understand why we have decided to restore this building. You, I'm sure, observed that the building is already under construction, something we've been waiting for many years. The building was built in 1929, and it is very much in need of update and renovation. But in 1847, this location was the site of what was known as the Free Academy, which was the precursor to CUNY. The Free Academy was the first free higher education institution in the United States, and it was established to address the needs of the tens of thousands of immigrants who were then pouring into New York City. In 1866, the Free Academy was renamed the College of the City of New York. And you will, if you look on the 23rd Street side, if you face the building, you will still see that name up on the side of the building. In 1919, the School of Business and Civic Administration was established at this location. And in 1929, as I said, this current building was constructed. Then we fast forward to 1953, when the school was renamed the Bernard M. Baruch School of Business and Public Administration. And the most recent chapter of the college's history began in 1968, when Baruch became a fully independent senior college of the City University of New York. So next year will be the 50th anniversary of Baruch College as a senior college in CUNY. And I think you can count on the fact there will be some celebrations about that. So as you can see, this is an incredible building, literally the historic hub and emotional heart of the campus, and it was the precursor to CUNY. So we believe that it is well worth preserving and renewing this building. And when the renovation is done, it will be a beautiful, up-to-date, modern building with central air conditioning and high-speed elevators and all good stuff. But I will ask for your patience during your time here as undergraduates, because unfortunately the building will be under construction the entire time you are here as undergraduates, and it will be open for business. We will continue to use it. But I can promise you that there will be new elevators while you are here. So that's something to look forward to. As much as I want you to know about this building and its history, I also want you to appreciate the great city in which it resides and you reside. Even if you grew up here, I urge you to take stock of the fact that we live in one of the greatest global cities on the planet, one that offers you an array of extraordinary opportunities and experiences, many of which are free. So go on an exploration, go exploring. Visit parts of the city that you don't know, and show your Baruch ID at dozens of cultural institutions, and you will get in free. Explore the world-class exhibits at the El Museo del Barrio, the Frick Collection, the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum, the Jewish Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, the Queens Botanical Garden, and the Whitney Museum of American Art. There are numerous small, highly focused museums, such as the National Folk Art Museum or the National Museum of the American Indian, that are always free. And there are many other cultural institutions that will allow you to make a small donation at your discretion to visit these important collections. Go check out the enormous and impressive Museum of Modern Art on Fifth Avenue. I'm sorry, Metropolitan Museum of Art, rather, on Fifth Avenue. The American Museum of Natural History. If you're still into dinosaurs, that's the place to go. The list goes on, and these are all out there waiting for you. So there's no excuse for not taking advantage of the attractions that draw millions and millions of visitors to this city every year, and you live here, so take advantage. I also urge you to become involved in and open to new experiences while you are at Baruch. Make a conscious effort to meet and get to know someone from a completely different cultural, ethnic, and social background from yourself. Enjoy world-class offerings at the Baruch Performing Arts Center, which include classical music, jazz, music and dance from other countries, and these opportunities are available to you at no cost. Get involved in student government. Participate in or go watch the Baruch NCAA sports teams. My hat is off the incredible dedication, particularly of our sports teams who have to practice out in the outer boroughs because we don't have sports fields here. But we have some incredibly committed athletes, and they carry on their dedication to their sport. You can join a club that focuses on something you're interested in, or you could join a club that focuses on something you know nothing about, to learn something new. You can learn a new language, or you can explore going abroad for study. These are the kinds of things that students should consider doing during their undergraduate years. And it's a time of experimentation, a time of exploration, and a time of learning. And please don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it, from your teachers, from the Baruch staff, from your friends and family. If you encounter an obstacle or if you're having a problem, whether it's academic, financial, or psychological, there is no need to go it alone. There are plenty of people here in this college, faculty and staff, who are ready and willing to help you. We also have an excellent counseling center that is available to you every day. Finally, I urge you to remain open to new subjects and the possibility of new career paths. Many of you chose to come here because you had a career in mind, and for the majority of you, that will turn out to have been the right decision. But I urge you to keep an open mind during your undergraduate years and explore opportunities as they present themselves. It's totally okay to change your major if you are taken with a new subject or a professor gets you excited about a new area, and it could just change the whole future path of your life. And if you've come to college not knowing what you want to major in, that's okay too. Go on an intellectual adventure. Try out new subjects. Again, that is the point of a liberal arts education. A whole range of ideas and subject matter are available to you. Go exploring them. Throughout it all, I hope you will dream big and aspire to achieve the kind of success that the college's namesake, Bernard Baruch, achieved. Each of you is capable of doing this, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here today. You have earned the right to study at one of the most competitive and highest quality colleges in the City University of New York system. Baruch will also give you more than just a great education. We are nationally renowned for providing support and guidance and connections that you will need to get that great first job. And all of it is available at an affordable price. Money Magazine just recently ranked Baruch as #1 in the United States among the best public colleges in terms of academic quality for the dollar, and #2 overall behind only Princeton University. So that's a pretty strong commendation. And I could go on to list the rankings we've received from U.S. News and World Report and Princeton Review and the New York Times and so forth and so on. I'm sure many of you looked at all of those when you were considering where to apply to college. So if you're planning to go somewhere in life, and I hope all of you have that as your goal, this is a great place to start. And when you graduate and begin your adult life, you will join the ranks of 135,000 Baruch alumni who live and work all over the world, and many of whom have achieved the pinnacle of their careers. At the outset of my remarks, I gave you a snapshot of who the class of 2021 is. But the numbers and percentages are only a small part of the story. We know that each of you has a unique and incredible story of your own. And one of the things that I look forward to, and I know my faculty colleagues and staff colleagues here on the platform join me in this, is getting to know you, to learn about your individual stories and how and what you aspire to do. The faculty and I are eager to get on with this and to help you on your way in your first year. And it is our goal to give you the education, the skills, the creative insights, and the ethical standards that are fundamental to a Baruch College education. And it is my hope that in everything you do as a student and in later life, you will carry forward the traditions and the values of this institution, and that you will make us all proud. Thank you, and go Bearcats!
Thank you, President Wallerstein. Baruch is fortunate to have an active and engaged student population with a strong student government. It now gives me great pleasure to call upon this year's undergraduate student government executive vice president, Dernie Florima. Dernie is a student in the Zicklin School of Business studying finance. He currently serves as executive vice president of USG here at the college. He is also a member of Management Leadership for Tomorrow, a student organization, and a fellow of Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, another student organization. He completed an internship this summer at Bank of America Merrill Lynch within their investment banking, technology, media, and telecom group. He enjoys writing and is currently the editor-in-chief of the blog Purpose and Penmanship. Welcome, Executive Vice President Florima.
Well, thank you so much for that great introduction. Really appreciate that. Good morning. I'm so grateful to be able to speak to you all. It really doesn't look like it, but I'm bubbling like crazy on the inside. Welcome. Welcome to new beginnings, to mistakes. Welcome to moments and memories of long nights and cram sessions and pre-book study rooms. Welcome to Baruch College. I took a long time thinking about this speech. What could I say? What have I learned that I could possibly tell a first year starting a new life in college? I'm not sure what you're going through. And the truth of the matter is that we probably are very different. Sure, I entered Baruch as a first year as well, but your thoughts were not mine, and my dreams were not yours. We are all unique individuals, which is why we were accepted to this college. But what is unique? What does that mean? It's more than just being different. It's having the embodiment, a character, a disposition that is ultimately personal. There can only be one, and that is you. It's a combination of talents, characteristics, dreams, and goals which could not and would not be fulfilled without being cultivated by the right person, you. But that begs the question, who are you? My mother is a Haitian immigrant, and every opportunity she gets, she reminds me, remember who you are. On my way to prom, after prom, my first day of college, even when I moved out this summer for my internship, remember who you are. But who is that? Throughout my college career, I constantly ask myself the question, who are you and who do you wish to become? Often I was not happy with the answer to the former because I knew where I wanted to be and I wasn't yet there. So I made a list of the things I wanted to become. Be truly confident, be a better leader, build relationships with my professors, get the juice. And as I started to accomplish these goals, regardless of that, I still felt discontent with my progress. Yes, I was confident, but I still felt timid around the prettiest girls. Yes, I was a better leader, but was I a great leader? Yes, I had the juice, but did I have the sauce? These things drove me. They drove me to be a better me. You see, what I began to realize is that I could never be happy with the person I was at the time because I could always envision myself as a better version of me. If there's any message I can give to you today, it is that life is about continuous learning. Now, of course, you've come to this fine institution to learn, but I'm talking about a learning that's greater than academic. It's social, it's interactive, it's living, it's emotional, it's passionate. Life in itself is about continuous learning, about learning about yourself and also about the world around you. However, the moment that you've stopped learning is the moment that you've lost your potential of being great. So how do we continue to learn? Well, here are some things that I've done. Number one, be adventurous. Don't let fear hold you back. One of the best ways to learn is through experiences. And if you're fearful of trying new things, allow me to give you these words by the late Frank Herbert. Fear is a mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. It sounds cliche, but if you fail to conquer your fears will conquer you. Number two, have attainable goals, not just dreams. The difference between having a dream and having a goal is that a dream is just that, just a dream. There is no actionable plan, there is no greater thought, there's no further action. Dream, plan, execute. Make realistic goals and achieve them. Number three, be receptive to advice. Often we allow our pride to keep us from learning from others. We think we are impeccable, but we can often learn from the mistakes and the successes of others. That being said, don't fool yourself with the aspiration of perfection in the eyes of others. Determine what perfection means to you, strive for that, and achieve it. Lastly, be willing to sacrifice for your success. Be willing to sacrifice for your success. My first year, I had 2 internships and a full-time academic schedule. I didn't have enough money for an unlimited Metro card, and I wasn't going to hop the train. So I remember walking from one internship to another, from school and back, about 30 blocks each day. I never complained, because I knew what I wanted, and I was willing to sacrifice for it as well. My favorite quote by Frederick Douglass is, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." And it is through struggle in which we learn. Do not be afraid of sacrifices when striving towards a goal or when surpassing an obstacle. Because nothing in life that's worth anything comes easily. Bearcats, these words of advice are not just for your time here at Baruch. The most successful people, the ones who leave an impacting value on the world and those around them, are those who understand and know that they don't know everything and that there's always something to learn. The game changers, the advocates, the parliamentarians, the leaders, the forces to be reckoned with are not necessarily the loudest or the smartest, but rather they are the most willing to learn. So when you face the struggles and obstacles of life, when you try something new, when you have to sacrifice, ask yourself 3 questions. Who am I? Who do I wish to be? And how do I learn from this? Thank you.
Thank you, Derny. I look forward to a productive year working with our student government. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Robert Courtney Smith. Professor Smith is a professor in the Austin W. Marks School of Public and International Affairs at Baruch College and in the Sociology Department at the CUNY Graduate Center. He authored Mexican New York, Transnational Worlds of New Immigrants, which won the American Sociological Association's 2008 Distinguished Book Award and a CUNY Presidential Award. Professor Smith chairs the Mexican American Students Alliance, a nonprofit promoting educational achievement and civic engagement in the Mexican community in New York. He founded and has been the lead faculty member for the Baruch College Mexican Consulate Leadership Program and is a board member of the CUNY Mexican Studies Institute. He served as an expert witness for the Department of Justice in a case of the United States versus the village of Port Chester, which he is now writing a book focused on that testimony. He also routinely advises community organizations and public and private institutions working with immigrants. He also does expert testimony in deportation and wrongful death cases. Professor Smith is writing 2 books, one of which is entitled Horatio Alger Lives in Brooklyn, but check his papers, which ethnographically follows the paths of 100 children of Mexican immigrants through adolescence into early adulthood, seeking to explain their differing life outcomes. His long-term research demonstrates the disruptive effect of long-term legal status on the well-being of these youth compared to their U.S. citizen counterparts. Professor Smith will be discussing issues related to this year's freshman text, The Book of Unknown Americans by Cristina Henriquez. Please join me in welcoming Professor Rob Smith.
Good morning, everyone. So I've taken my cell phone out. Don't throw me off. It's got a timer, and I want to make sure I don't run over. I want to start this morning by saying congratulations to all of you. You've gotten into a great university, one of the best public colleges in the country, and certainly one of the best buys in the country. So well done. I also want to say well done to your families who have sacrificed a great deal to get you here. I know that many of you are the first in your families to go to college, which makes your accomplishment that much more meaningful. So I know there's going to be a lot of clapping today, but stop now and clap for yourselves and your families. Nobody ever gets tired of hearing that they've done a good job too many times, so congratulations. It's a very celebratory day, and this is a big first step that you've taken, getting into a good college, and our job here is to help you take other steps to move into adulthood and to move into your careers and make your marks on society. Now, this is your first convocation. It's also my first time giving a convocation address, so we're going to do this together. When I thought about how to give a proper convocation speech and what to say about the Book of Unknown Americans, it brought me back to some of the original questions. What's the point of a university education? One of the things is it gives you more income, more status, more opportunity, and this is a key part of CUNY's mission. More concretely, I was thinking, what skills do we want you guys to have to launch successfully into your own lives? What do you need to become good citizens in the United States and the world, good stewards of this country and of the world? This is also a generational change, right? Most of us up here on this stage have our trajectories, our lives are set. You guys are just beginning to launch. We've left you with a host of really knotty problems, right? Really difficult problems. Climate change, a divided society. We want to help you guys to figure out how to ask the hard questions, to do things others have not done, come up with new medical cures, new ways of fixing old problems. I hope some of you join us as colleagues at CUNY at some point in the future. So I've started off by putting out some big questions, but the universities are places for big questions. So I'm going to try to approach some of these questions in two ways: discussing the Book of Unknown Americans by Cristina Hernandez, and then, as I was asked to do, to talk a little bit about some of my own research, and to talk about some of the key questions facing our country related to immigration these days. So, and it's a convocation, so the tone should be completely uplifting. But I'm also going to be talking about immigration, which has both very happy elements to it and grim elements. So I will try to minimize the grimness, but I won't sugarcoat it. All right, so the big questions. What's the relationship between art and science, especially social science? What should we take from a novel like The Book of Unknown Americans? What does it mean to analyze something like The Book of Unknown Americans? And can we use those same skills to better understand our society, to analyze the words of politicians or the words of leaders of all types? Specifically, I'm going to urge us to consider the images and the related policy stories or narratives and compare them to the data and the facts. Policy narratives are stories that policymakers and other advocates tell to justify the policies. If you define the policy, the problem as one thing, it leads to a certain set of policies. If you define it as something else, it leads to others. I want us to think about those things. Finally, I'm going to make a plea and say that universities are excellent places to disagree civilly with other people. This sounds like it doesn't need stating, but increasingly we need the ability to talk to people we don't agree with and to actually get along with them and be friends, and I think this is important. So before going into these big questions, let me tell you a brief overview of some of the research I've done and why I'm both a good person to appreciate the contributions of the Book of Unknown Americans and also maybe the worst person to critique it. That was a joke, by the way. You guys can laugh. Yeah, okay. Don't fall out of your seats. That was my best joke, too. So, by the way, it's only going to be downhill from here. The other thing is my kids always tease me. I get to play Dumbledore once a year, right? We get to put our robes on. So, anyway, why am I the best and worst guy to read this book? Well, one of the things is I spent a year teaching English to mushroom workers in Pennsylvania, and I lived in Newark, Delaware, where this book is set for 4 years. And I spent a year researching the effects of the legalization program from the 1980s in that industry. So I'm intimately familiar with the setting and the facts of this case. So, all right, let me give you, and I'll come back to that issue. So the first book, many of you would be interested, I think, in some of the analysis in it. It's called Mexican New York. It follows the ways in which migrants from Puebla to New York have lived lives that have become transnationalized in politics, in the way they negotiate gender, in their adolescence. So, for example, how many kids are sent back to live in their home villages if they get into trouble in the United States, or who go back for rituals, or some who go back to live. I'm sure these will be familiar experiences to some of you. A second book, which I've just finished drafting, Horatio Alger Lives in Brooklyn but Check His Papers, follows 100 kids for 10 to 20 years. Kids who started off, not kids, young people, who started off about your age, and I followed them till their late 20s and early 30s, some of them longer. The key takeaway is that in families that have legal status, there's a great deal of upward mobility. And for people who are undocumented, that mobility gets derailed. And I'll come back to this as well. The third book looks at the Voting Rights Act, the main law protecting the voting rights of minorities in this country, and looks at the way a specific lawsuit and changes in politics after that town lost the Voting Rights Act lawsuit. And then the final book is just finished, How Governments and Institutions Should Talk to Immigrants, Lessons from Mexico's Seguro Popular healthcare study, which I'll refer to as well. So let's come back to the big questions. What's the relationship between art, science, social science? How should we read a book like The Book of Unknown Americans? Why read novels anyway? If you're going to be an engineer, researcher, an accountant, I mean, you have to read it because you're going to have to write papers about it, but what else can we take from it? Well, one answer to this from the Greeks and others is that art helps us to understand and feel moved by another person's story, to see life through their eyes, to create greater sympathy, to create more of a community, and to make collaboration more possible. It helps us not to judge others quite so quickly. Life and data can be very messy, and reading great works of art can help us create the tools to understand and analyze it. On this score, Cristina Enriquez's book of Unknown Americans succeeds beautifully. She tells stories of immigration and immigrants that most Americans would never hear and never understand if they didn't read the book. Now, I should insert a caveat here, a buyer beware. Many of you were probably not surprised by the book because most of you are from New York City. New York City is in the United States, as you all know, but it's quite different than many places here. 3 of 8.5 million people in New York City were born abroad, and the majority of people in New York City are either born abroad or are children of immigrants. So it's a big deal, right? This is an immigrant city. There's over 200 languages spoken, and over half of New Yorkers speak a language other than English at home. New York also has a lot more BAs, PhDs, engineers, and doctors than the rest of America per capita. So don't let anyone ever tell you that immigration is bad for America. All right, so good things about the Book of Unknown Americans. I like the overlapping narratives. I like the mini family biographies that move along in sync over the course of a year. There's a Rashomonic quality of the constant perspective changings where you see the same events through different persons' eyes. The major characters are deeply sympathetic. They're immigrant strivers from the parents of Maribel, whose brain injury leads her parents to come to the U.S., to the friendship between Maribel's and Mayor's, the two young people's families. The relationship between the families develops believably. I like the small struggles of Alma trying to navigate the bus. Anyone who's ever lived in another country, even if you speak the language, it's really hard to negotiate things you don't know how to do. I've gotten lost in Mexico many times looking for the right bus. And the big relationships also felt real. Alma and Arturo disagree. They negotiate their decisions. They're in love. They're worried. Like all parents, they worry if they've made the right decisions. Enriquez's language is also beautiful. I paused to savor some of the prose. As someone who writes for a living, I appreciate good writing. So all of these things make it a really good book. So what's not to like? Well, you can ask a social scientist, and they'll always find something not to like. That's joke number 2, guys. Thank you. So I remember I said I was a good person to analyze the book and a bad person. So let me tell you a little bit more about that. I spent a year teaching English in the labor camps in Pennsylvania where the mushroom workers lived. I was a senior in college, and I hitchhiked or borrowed a car every week to drive out to Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, about 20 miles away, to teach that class. And I brought the students to the grocery store so that they could practice their English. I even brought them to parties at the university with my friends because they were my friends too. Now, I want to insert another caveat here. The Book of Unknown Americans has big and small factual problems and a big policy narrative problem. Now, the caveat is this: I'm not a literalist in fiction. Art is not research. It doesn't have to obey the same rules. So in books by, for example, Gabriel Garcia Marquez or Paul Astor, people can live for hundreds of years or walk on the air, and it doesn't bother me because that's magical realism. That's what it's about. You're supposed to suspend disbelief. But the Book of Unknown Americans is realist fiction. It's presented as giving voice to millions of unknown Americans, and it's an American classic. So it should get its facts straight because the story tells about these unknown Americans and resonates with policy narratives in surprising ways. I'm going to subject it to some critique, but I'll also have suggestions about how it could be made better. So I don't like social scientists that get up and just say everything is terrible, and until we change everything, nothing is good, right? I mean, there's nothing more horrible than that, but it's like the standard academic thing. I always try to look for strategic sites of intervention. When I give papers on comments on papers, I always say, this is good, this, and this is bad, and then here's how to fix it. So I'll do the same thing. Cristina Enriquez doesn't need my suggestions, but it's a, professorial compulsion. So in any case, that was joke 3, by the way, guys. All right. So specifically, the problem is that the book avoids, misunderstands, and gets wrong the issue of undocumented status, which should pervade it given who she's talking about. It's a major human rights issue in the United States and a key reality for the people who she was profiling. I know the apartment complexes where she was working. I know those workers. That almost all of them came as undocumented immigrants and then were later legalized. There are 11 million undocumented people in New York, which is a lot of people. If this was a country, it would be the 13th largest country out of 48 countries in Europe. And it's a fundamental, undocumented people are excluded from fundamental institutions in American life. Even while they pay taxes, raise kids, work hard, worship with us, go to our schools, they're part of the community. And you don't all have to agree with me. It's fine. Universities are places where we can disagree. Let me talk about some of the small problems, then some of the bigger problems, then the policy narrative, then I'll move on. So the small problems are things like, she says that Arturo takes the bus to work. Nobody takes the bus to mushroom farms. You get a ride with a crew boss or something else. And Arturo and Alma come socially isolated. No one comes socially isolated to work in that industry. If you're a student with a visa, you'll land in a place and not know anyone. Everyone else in a place like this would be recruited. These are small problems, but they suggest to me she doesn't know the world she writes about as well as she should. The bigger problems is that undocumented status plays no roles in any of these lives, and the author has Alma say that they did it the right way, and that implying they're better than people who don't have papers. They waited a year to get the visa. The policy narrative frames legal status as a moral issue and frames undocumented people as moral failures, morally lazy. Why is this a problem? Because the Book of Unknown Americans tells a story that doesn't fit with the social reality on the ground. Arturo, for example, would never have gotten a visa to work in the mushroom industry. He would never have been recruited. They don't give visas for people who don't have experience, and there's no way this would have happened. More importantly, the major plot pivot for the story of Maribel, Arturo, and Alma makes no sense. The Book of Unknown Americans posits that Maribel, the teenager, gets a brain injury. They take her to the hospital where they do brain surgery, and then the doctor hands her a list of schools with good special education programs in Delaware. Now, we're set in Pátzcuaro. Well, people from Pátzcuaro don't go there. It's a place called Moroleón, Guanajuato. She could have known that. The other thing is, how would this doctor in Mexico have a list of special ed programs in Delaware? It doesn't make any sense. The other thing is this, having just finished a book on migrants and the healthcare system in Mexico, local hospitals don't have brain surgery capacity. And a self-employed construction worker like Arturo would be made to pay up front for any services because he wouldn't have had insurance, particularly then. So the most likely outcome would have been this. Maribel gets a brain injury. The hospital either can't do the surgery or won't pay unless he pays. He can't pay and she dies, and they stay in Mexico. That's a very sad, boring book, which is why I'm a sociologist and not a novelist. That's joke number 4, guys. Come on. These jokes played really well last week in Las Vegas, and you're killing me up here. All right, I said I would try to do something positive. So if she had anchored herself in the facts more closely, she could have written a different book that I think would have been better. Maribel could have had a learning disability, and her friends from Mexico, if they were set in the place where the kids come from, where the migrants come from, could have told her about good schools with IEPs in the United States, and they could have come, like everyone else in that industry, as undocumented workers. This would have been a richer, more complex moral story where the parents chose to break a law to help their child survive and get the opportunities she needs. And it would have been much closer to the reality of what most undocumented people and most immigrants in that status have to confront. All right, enough of the good and the bad of the book. I'm going to give you guys brief vignettes or brief summaries of some of the work that I'm doing, because I was asked to do that. I hope some of it's interesting to you guys. And I will try to maintain an upbeat convocational tone even while I'm talking about things which sometimes make me grim. So I'm directing a large project on DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which gives undocumented people a chance to get legal status, work permits, driver's licenses, and things like that. So I said before that undocumented people do not enjoy they're excluded from major institutions. CUNY's not one of them, by the way, and hasn't been since the 1980s. And along with about 27 other states in the country, you can attend CUNY as an undocumented person at in-state tuition rates. But in this study that we're doing, we've screened 1,700 people across New York State. In our work, we found that 20% of our overall sample and 22% of parents had reported being victims of a violent crime, versus 2% in the general population. What this means is that people who are undocumented are victimized, but not reporting it to the police because they fear contact with the police will cause them to be deported and separated from their families. And I want to underline this. Most undocumented people do not live in all undocumented families. Most of them live in mixed status families. There are over 5 million kids who are citizens who have undocumented parents. And so you have kids, for example, who are afraid to apply, young people like yourselves. I'm old enough now that people in their 20s look like kids. This is bad. You're grown-ups now. But in any case, you have young people, students, who are afraid to apply for financial aid because they're told that applying for financial aid when their parents don't have a Social Security number will trigger an investigation. This is not true. But you have people who say, we can't call 911, or a woman, for example, who had a miscarriage because she could not call an ambulance at night because she couldn't get a ride to the hospital because she feared that the police would come with her and lost her pregnancy. The good news is DACA, there's over 750,000 people who've gotten it, has increased educational attainment, earnings, and has helped to keep families together. And the program is still live. Okay. I told you some of this would be grim, but I will do my best to also have hopeful parts. The second book that I'm doing now, I've just finished drafting, the Horatio Alger book, is a long-term study of mobility among children of undocumented, children of immigrants, Mexican immigrants mainly. Now, the dominant story, the policy narrative in the United States very often is that Mexican immigrants are the bad immigrants. They're criminals, they don't value education, they're all undocumented, and they don't progress over time. My study of these 100 young people who were about your age when I started this study and whom I followed into their late 20s up to their mid-30s. In fact, the children who have U.S. citizens or have legal residence are very upwardly mobile, more so than the average in New York City. And the undocumented kids, more than half of these of my sample goes to college, which is not out of line with the census numbers. But the undocumented part of kids in the sample did not. And what happens is that undocumented status breaks the link between current educational effort and future reward, because no matter how much education you get, you're still undocumented and you still can't work legally. So part of the problem is that legal status is derailing upward mobility mechanisms. Let me talk about another one, which may be familiar to you guys. There are two other mechanisms that I write about in this book: family learning about education and the family economy. In families where everyone is a U.S. citizen or has permanent residence, the older children who go to college learn how to negotiate U.S. schools, high schools, etc. They help their younger siblings with their homework, get them into a good high school in New York, and then earn more money than their parents because they have more education. This gives the younger children a big boost up, right? Older children grow up in younger families, younger children grow up in older families usually make more money. In undocumented families, the older kids may not go to college, and even if they do, they are still going to make not as much money as their parents. In two cases that I compare in the book, you have two parents and two older children working for a total of $70,000 of income for 6 people, versus an equivalent case of 2 children, adult children working, 2 parents working, and 2 younger children, where they make over $200,000. So the undocumented family grows up, and kids grow up in, the U.S. citizen kids of undocumented parents grow up in extreme poverty, but the younger siblings in the all-documented family grow up in a middle-class household in New York. CUNY, delightfully, has played a huge role here. It's the primary engine of upward mobility among this second generation. So the policy narrative here is that U.S. policy of maintaining long-term undocumented status is derailing the intra-family upward mobility mechanisms that are working very well for people who have status and not for others, and is in putting downward mobility onto undocumented families. All right, let me move on to another topic here: Dreamers and DACA. So the Dreamers, as you guys may know, are undocumented immigrants, many who now have DACA, deferred action. They changed the policy narrative about immigration in this country in profound ways, and a lot of them sat literally where you're sitting now. The founders, for example, several of them of United We Dream, are Baruch students. Leaders of executive directors of organizations that do immigrant integration work and advocacy in this city are former Baruch students. So you guys you're in hallowed company here. The policy narrative before was illegals are lawbreakers and they should go home. But undocumented kids, the Dreamers, grew up and said, we've been brought here at age 2. We just want the same rights as everyone else. We are self-sufficient. We've worked hard. They invoked the elements of the American creed to change that narrative. The people in the Trail of Dreams walked from Florida to Washington, D.C., talking to people along the way who hated them, to say, look, this is the human face of an undocumented person. You can call and get me deported, but here's what I want. I want to go to school. I want to get a real job. I want to marry. These kids show moral leadership, these young people. You guys are in good company in this way. All right, last element of work. Voting and immigrants. We go back to the idea of images, policy narratives, and facts. This is another book, part of the Voting Rights Act book I'm working on. There has been for over a decade in this country a policy narrative, I would say even a moral panic, that voter fraud has been rampant in the United States, that in fact we do not have sufficient protections of the franchise, and that people who shouldn't be voting are voting. And there's a claim actually made that 3 million illegal persons voted. There were 3 million illegal voters in the last election. But studies have shown, and judicial findings from federal court proceedings have shown almost no voter fraud. One study from the Brennan Center said that getting hit by lightning is a bigger risk than that an election will be deterred by voter fraud, especially imposter fraud, which is someone showing up and pretending to be someone else. But there's a lot of effects of voter ID laws. The Government Accounting Office did a report in 2014 that showed that and they matched up states with and without, roughly equal states, with and without voter ID laws, and it showed that voter turnout went down 2.5 to 3% when you have voter ID laws. In Wisconsin, a voter ID law was struck down because a judge found that 300,000 people, or 9% of all voters, lacked ID. And these voters tend to be poor, old, and minority, and they tend to vote for one party. In Wisconsin, the margin of victory during the last election was 22,000 votes. So if there were 300,000 people who could have been disenfranchised here, it's a big deal. In Pennsylvania, a party leader bragged about decreasing the amount by which President Obama beat the candidate Romney from beating candidate McCain from 10% to 5% using an ID law. So the alternative explanation here is that voter ID law's real purpose is to decrease the vote, to disqualify, to prevent some people from voting. Things like gun laws, gun IDs being good for showing your ID, but student IDs not, reinforce that. The final step in this policy narrative now, since these studies have come out, is that there's a fear of voter frauds, so we have to legislate to protect against the fear. But it's an interesting circle, right? First, there's this thing, we have fear, we have to get a law, but then no, there's not actually, well, now there's fear of it and we have to legislate. In any case, problems with this narrative end up flowing down into interactions between poll workers, for example, who may ask Latino voters for ID but not ask whites, or ask in poll worker trainings, how do we know that Latinos are not illegal aliens? This is a dangerous notion, I think, in our democracy. So I have two final points here. One final point and then some closing remarks. What do we do about undocumented status? Well, we faced this problem before of what to do with people who some of the country doesn't want. After the revolution, there were lots of people who were Tories who sided with the British during the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. We didn't deport them. We, in fact, made a reasonable test where if they'd been in the country a long time and they swore loyalty to the United States and they were otherwise of good character, we allowed them to become citizens. My position would be that if we can allow people who picked the wrong side of a war fought on our soil to become citizens, we should allow kids who were brought here as babies to become citizens as well. American jurisprudence does not hold 2-year-olds accountable for their action, but that's what this policy does. If we do not let kids who came here as undocumented kids become citizens later, we are sentencing them to a life of hard labor, because they will never be able to, if they go to college, they can never work legally at the level commensurate with their education. If we could fix it before, we can fix this again. All right, enough of the soapbox. Some closing remarks. Universities are and should be places where we can talk to people we disagree with and get to know them, is one of the things I want to talk to you guys about. Another one is to talk to you about some things I think we need, and the other one is to underline this notion of generational change, and to throw some of the problems into your lap to start thinking about. So there's a quote by Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a very famous quote, that you're entitled to your own opinions, but not entitled to your own facts. Now, it used to be a thing that everyone, that's like joke number 5, by the way, and it's the last one, I promise. Increasingly, though, Moynihan's quote isn't right, because we are increasingly segregated by social media and institutional media into groups that get alternative facts, different sets of facts. This is a big problem in our society, and it leads to increasing division and an inability of different groups to understand each other. This is a problem that you guys are going to be facing very strongly over the next 40 years as grown-ups. So I'd like you to get working on it now. If you have any ideas, I'll be in my office later. We can work them through. But I think universities are good places to start doing that. In my classes, I take positions I don't agree with, and I argue vigorously for them. Last semester, and I also make sure that everyone's opinions are good or valued. I had a student last semester with whose opinions I disagreed with, and the class disagreed with, and I called them aside after class, and I said, listen, no one can shush you, and even if I disagree with you, you'll be graded on your argument and your marshaling of data. I want you to keep speaking out, and I will back you up. We should have discussions. We should have people, it should be a safe place for people to discuss their disagreements. What kinds of things do we need? Well, we need election law lawyers. We need climate change scientists. We need people who can figure out how to understand this digital world that all of you are on. I was amused that the provost asked you to turn your cell phones off when we started. It made me feel like I was at the dinner table at my own house telling my kids, put your phones away, no phones at the dinner table. You guys are going to have to figure out a lot of these things. And we are here to help you think about how to do that. All right, final remarks. When I look out this morning at all of you guys, I feel a great deal of hope. I feel your hunger to learn, to advance in your careers, to start your lives. And I feel really happy to be working here at CUNY, which is an institution whose mission it is to help you to do these things, to be the engine of social mobility, and to create better citizens. I'm going to entrust you guys to help create a better world for the next generation and then for your own kids. So congratulations on your convocation. It's just the first step, but you guys have done a great job to get here.
You know, last year I had an opportunity to discuss some of Rob Smith's research with him, and while we don't agree on everything, I was so inspired that I got on Metro North and spent a day in the village of Port Chester just to get some sense of what was going on in that community related to his testimony. It's now my honor to introduce our Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students, Art King. Dean King begins his 4th year at Baruch, where he provides leadership for the division that provides student activities, services for students with disabilities, residence life, counseling services, freshman seminar and leadership development, athletics, and career services. Welcome, Dean King.
Congratulations, class of 2021. Today is your day. You are off to a great places. You are off and away. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. You are on your own and you know what you know. And you are the persons who will decide where to go. Again, congratulations. Now, Dr. Seuss's 1990 poem, "Oh, the Places You Will Go," is almost embarrassingly simple for those who crave a more intellectual challenge. But its premise can be applied to the many life situations. Dream high, expect pitfalls, deal with them, and carry on with your dreams. I enjoy using the excerpts from this poem from time to time as I speak to students and young people because it sort of reminds me of young people like you and to encourage you to keep plowing ahead. You will make choices here at Baruch College, some good, others not so good. I hope that while you're here that you will accumulate the wisdom and skill of discernment, which I hope will fine-tune and fuel your desire to aim for academic excellence. You are at the institution with the best bang for the buck, so give yourselves another round of applause. To achieve academic excellence, therefore, you must go to class. What a novel idea. You've got to go to class. And look, every class, not just one class, but every class, every day. You have to participate in classroom discussions, as Professor Smith said. Get to know your professors. You've just gotten to know one. He's encouraged you to come and see him. Ask questions, work in study groups, meet future leaders in those groups like yourself. That's what a successful Bearcat does. That's what a successful Baruch student is all about. That's why you're here. That's why you're here to achieve your dreams. Congratulations. I also invite you to get engaged in the myriad of opportunities we have in place for you. As said earlier by our president and many others, we have so many things here for you to do. I have the pleasure this afternoon of speaking to your parents, and I'm going to tell them that you behaved during Convocation because you didn't have your cell phones out, you were paying attention, and I know that if we were to give another pop quiz, you will all get an A. Take advantage of the diversity on this campus. It's one of the most diverse campuses here in the United States. I sat many years ago where you are sitting. I, too, am an immigrant of this country, and I have achieved the American dream. So you can, too. Take advantage also of the many sporting opportunities. There are basketball games, volleyball games, there are clubs and organizations, over 160 clubs and organizations. If you can't find something that you're interested in, form a club yourself. Come and let us know what you're interested in. We can get you a club, and you can be the president of that club as well. Our employers continue to tell us that they want students who are actively engaged. They want students who know about leadership. We teach you about it, you practice it, you bring your skills together. Our employers want you, and they're some of the best employers in this country as well. So you need to get prepared. You need to go to our career center, get your resume reviewed, get opportunities to get internships here in this city and certainly across the country. You today are off to a very good start. Everybody has gotten an A so far. You have started with a 4.0 GPA. Now it's your opportunity to keep that 4.0. By show of hands, show me those who are going to keep that 4.0 from today onward. You're not sure? What happened here? What's going on? You're not sure? All right, but you're going to keep that 4.0. A very good start, and I want to congratulate you again. One of the opportunities that I have also today, and I have to use my cell phone for this one, is to have you stand if you can. Please stand. And ahead on the overhead, you should see the Bearcat commitment. If you can, please stand. Oh, you're like, ah. So, very good. The energy is upstairs. Very good. Calm down for a second. Look at the overhead. Shh. Calm down. I know you're all bubbling and ready to go. As a Bearcat, you are making a commitment today to be honest, to have integrity, to be the type of Bearcat who's going to be successful. As a result, at the count of 3, I want you to say the Bearcat commitment in unison. 1, 2, 3. I will dedicate myself to learning and practice personal integrity and academic honesty. I will challenge myself and others to achieve the highest level of academic excellence by taking personal responsibility for my success. I will value our culture of diversity, respect those around me, and foster an inclusive community through inquiry, compassion, and celebration. I will promote engagement and involvement in our community and beyond through participation, leadership, and service. I promise to honor these values and lead by example. Isn't that fantastic? You've made a promise. Very good. So you've made that promise, you've made that commitment. Now, class of 2015, you are now inducted. Beg your pardon. I get so excited that I'm thinking back in the past. Forgive me, I meant 2115, that's the next class. But right now you're 2021, I beg your pardon. Congratulations, welcome to Baruch. You're now inducted in the class of 2021. Thank you.
Please be seated. Please be seated. You know, I'm so excited about Dean King's move to introduce the Bearcat commitment several years ago, because as Chief Academic Officer of the college, one of the things that is part of my role is to ensure that we adhere to several important principles of academic integrity. We often consider honor to be intangible, but as a student and a scholar, it's your most important attribute, and one that you must protect. You must never take the work of others and represent it as being your own. You need to find your authentic voice and make sure that you are heard. This includes group projects where you must ensure that you participate fully and share ownership in any work that is submitted with your name on it. You also have to resist the opportunity to misrepresent your knowledge by cheating on a quiz, test, or assignment. The reputation for integrity in our college is one that we own collectively, and you need to do your part in preserving that. Now, every year, regrettably, we identify some situations where students have not maintained these standards of academic integrity. The faculty are involved. We have a student and faculty committee that recommends penalties, and every year we have several students that are dismissed from Baruch for a year, for 2 years, during which they are not able to enroll at Baruch or anywhere in CUNY. This is a pretty severe step, but it reflects how important this is to all of us. So I'd like you to think carefully about how you're going to conduct yourself and maintain your honor. And perhaps to give my favorite quote of the day from Derni's mom, remember who you are. Now, on a more festive note, I welcome Professor Teresa Parker, the director of the Baruch Choir, who is going to teach you and lead you in singing our alma mater.
Number 3? Are we on? Yeah, it's working. Can't even. I'll say good morning again because it's my first time saying. Do you hear me? No. Do you hear me? Yes. Swap, swap. Here we go. Good morning. Good morning. Do we have the lyrics? Yes. So what we're going to do this morning is practice for graduation. Thank you so much. I picked up the wrong mic. I won't yell now. I'll sing the first few lines, ask you to repeat, and then I ask my backup singers here will join me. We will sing the whole song. Okay? So then, I can see them. Everyone sees them? No? Well, I'll try to repeat, and you'll remember as we go, and I'll try to give them to you. So as we go, standing high above the city's mighty roar, Bernard Baruch, we sing to you now and evermore. Sing it with me, standing high up the city's mighty. Bernard Baruch, we sing now and evermore, praising you for years. We will always be proud to call you alma mater, jubilant and free. Halfway there. Okay, the next section, knowledge of the world, the honor it will bring. Sing it with me, and knowledge of the world, the honor it will bring. Are what you have given us, that is why we sing. Are what you have given us, that is why we sing. Your dignity and strength make our spirits soar, and your dignity make our spirits soar. Yes, Bernard Baruch, we sing to you forevermore. Bernard Baruch, we sing to you forevermore. Bernard Baruch, we sing to you forevermore. All righty then, that was rehearsal. Everybody stand. Everybody stand, 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 stand. Are you ready? Are you ready? I'm just waiting for you to say you're ready. Are you ready? Yeah. Here we go. At the top, standing, 1, 2, ready, and standing high up, the city's mighty. Bernard Baruch, we sing to now and ever, praising you for years. We will always be proud to call you, proud to alma mater, jubilant. Knowledge of the world, the honor it will bring. Are what you have given us, that is why we see your dignity and make our spirits soar. Bernard Baruch, we sing to you forevermore. Bernard Baruch, we sing to you forevermore.
right, please be seated. Please be seated.
No, I didn't.
See, you're that much closer to commencement and graduation now. We have that out of the way. Students are now going to join their groups for discussions of Christina Enrique's book. Your group assignment is posted on the screen above me, and it's also available on the website. I'm going to really need your cooperation this morning. We have quite a bit of construction on 23rd Street, not just our own building, but buildings on both sides of us. So we have student leaders in navy shirts, and they are going to indicate to you when it's appropriate for your part of the auditorium to get up and to egress safely. We can't pour 1,500 people on the streets too rapidly. So we want to thank you all and congratulate you. Look forward to having a good day. I'd like everyone to please also stay in their places until the platform party is able to leave the auditorium. Congratulations.
Hello, Bearcats. Sorry about that. All right, just like Provost, I'm Damali Smith. I am the Director of Student Life. And just like Provost Christie mentioned, we will have you exit in an orderly fashion. So I'm gonna ask that, can all the peer mentors raise their hands?